there's no shame in having a high body count.
Well, there's no shame for men, so why should the shame fall on the woman if she is occupying that space?
Right.
Okay, so out the gate, I gotta stop it right there because this is the worst argument that I hear from women. Well, it's okay if the men do it, so the women should be able to do it too. Well, if it's okay for a man to walk down a dark alley by himself, does that mean it's okay for women to do that as well? And honestly, I don't think it's okay for men to have high body counts either. But the same women who will complain about men having high body counts are the same women who go after men with high body counts.
I just don't think we should shame like things as trivial as sex. Like it's everybody does it. Like you can say like, oh, she has a high body count versus like I have sex with my boyfriend like every day. Like I just don't feel the difference there. Like so what if it's different men? So like as long as you're being safe, as long as you're being like anybody should be able to just have sex with someone if consensual sex.
Yeah.
So I think interestingly, I think this is what's moral and what's healthy may be different for different people. So there's something called sociosexuality, which is just like there's like a test you can literally take about how likely you are to engage in casual relationships depending on your attitudes, your preferences, etc. And while it's true that men tend to score higher in it, some women do score high in it. For those women, it is a very healthy, wonderful thing to do. But I also think that we've been shamed so much and been called so many derogatory terms that I think some women feel like, okay, I need to fight back from this and I need to go and engage in hookup culture, and that may not be right for a lot of women, and it's not right for me, so I don't personally engage in it. And I do think that again, what's healthy may not be the same thing as what's moral, and I think those two things get convoluted a lot in this topic.
I completely agree.
So there's a lot to tackle in what they said right there. But first of all, there's a huge difference between having a bunch of sex with one person versus having a lot of sex with multiple different people. I mean, I think it's quite obvious why those things are drastically different. So I'm not really going to get into that right now. But I think what the big divide is going to be in this conversation is morality. So we heard her talk about what's healthy and what's morally correct. But I don't think sleeping around with multiple people is morally correct or healthy. And we've already heard them talk about how sex isn't really a big deal. But there's evidence that shows that the hookup culture disproportionately negatively affects women. But we'll see if they touch on that later on in the video.
All right, can they disagree a step forward?
I think that I can acknowledge that not everybody is going to be Christian and hold the same values that I, as a Christian woman, do. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18, I believe it is, being sexually immoral and promiscuity is frowned upon and it is a sin. So I think that anybody, man or woman, should feel shame for being promiscuous. It's not something that any Christian should accept. Like I said, I acknowledge that not everyone is Christian. So if you have a different belief on that, that's going to be an agree to disagree. I'm not going to try to fight someone who is like a free spirit and they're going to go do whatever they want. I acknowledge that some women and men are going to continue to do that. But I think that promiscuity leads to women being unhappy in more relationships. So there's studies that show the more men women have sex with, the less likely they'll be happy in the next relationship. And I think that we need to get back to finding a partner and being happy and repairing the nuclear family in society. I think that's what's going to help society move forward. But what if...
So she's referring to a pair bonding study where they talked about how the more sexual partners a woman had, the less likely they were to have long-lasting marriages. I believe it was 80% of women whose first sexual encounter was with their husband would go on to stay married. While the number of sexual bodies increased, they were more likely to get divorced early on in their marriage.
We just didn't shame people for how they live their lives. I think shame is very important. We should shame people.
I think we should shame people for things like that are actually bad, like murder, and sexual assault. But
100 years ago, this fornication was considered very bad.
Right,
So,
and then we progressed and we realized that
all that progress to sleep around.
I wouldn't say sleep, using terms like sleep around, sexual promiscuity.
What would you
Well, high body count, you're sleeping with lots of people.
Sure.
So
no, it is
what
freedom
is
to
that
not be
outside
shamed or have a scarlet letter or like be able to do OnlyFans like what I do. I think
but
that
it's
is
shameful.
progress. You want to let society know, hey, this person does this. And so if you connect your life and bond with this person, there's a huge risk that they're going to do this to you. So people who don't share your worldview, though, like you said, there are people like me, I don't believe I'm an atheist. So should you shame me based on your worldview?
I think you should shame yourself.
No,
I don't think that it's on anybody to shame another person. Like I'm not going to go around shaming anybody because they have a high body count. I think that we need to instill shame back into ourselves and realize where we go wrong. And if you, like I said, if you don't feel shame, like that's completely on you and that's up to you. But if like how I would see myself as someone who doesn't have a high body count, I have one, it's my husband, then like I don't have shame on myself for that reason. But like that's me coming from a Christian point of view. More power to
Yeah, I don't think we should shame people in the way of like name calling or bashing them, but we should shame people in the way of reminding them that, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And she's right. We should shame people for doing wrong. But the big question is going to be who decides what's right and what's wrong. I think that's where the crux of this debate is. Is sleeping around wrong?
You, going back to the myopic thing that we were talking about earlier, so more power to you if that's how you find your empowerment, that's fine. But for the woman who doesn't necessarily occupy your world and your space, then do you not think that she should be free to do whatever she?
I think she can. I said it already. Like, I think you can completely feel however you want to feel about yourself. I don't think that that's on somebody else to shame. Like that's not a Christian.
Because it's not biblical.
I
think
one-on-one, it's not biblical, but societal it is. We need to enforce shame like pedophilia, right? That has got to be shamed. Can we all agree? Right?
Yeah.
So there
Like
needs
I
to
said,
be
bad
a
things.
line for societal shame.
I think just looking at the emotion of shame. What does shame do to us? Shame says, I did something bad. Why? Because it can course correct, because it can change the way that we're living. I think regardless of religious beliefs or whatever that is, shame is an emotion everyone feels throughout the day, all different kinds. Shame because I cut someone off, whatever. I did something that was wrong that I don't want to do again. Why? Because shame's uncomfortable.
Right.
We don't want to feel shame. We don't want to put shame on people. But I actually think shame is a great emotion. Shame keeps us safe and keeps you from making the same mistakes again and again.
Great, and we sure, and I think that society should shame people like pedophiles, sexual offenders, murderers, because these are things that pretty much everyone in a society can agree that's a bad thing.
For now, what about abortion? And what about people in the LGBTQ community talking about minor attracted persons? We're moving the Overton window, and it started by destigmatizing fornication.
I think you think 100 years ago things were better.
I do. These issues existed on the fringe, and when they happened,
well, actually, that was 200 now, but
yeah, we
still,
cannot condemn that.
But like,
That's a separate issue that we
yeah,
should
but it wasn't.
you're bringing in
Making it
separate
okay.
Yeah, I meant with this, but I think the disagreement here is you guys think, we all agree with something that's wrong or something you believe is wrong, depending on your moral philosophy, you should be shamed. But I think the discrepancy is we don't agree this is wrong, and if all you're going to throw at us is Christianity,
So
but
if
there's an
men,
objective
if
truth.
men can have a high body count, so should women? I'm
No,
like, again,
I think
we
it's
need to
equal
make
racial.
ourselves.
I think
I'm glad that she brought up the Overton window. And this is why I'm a big supporter of religion. Because to me, religion is that anchor for your moral compass. And so when you don't have that anchor, your morals shift with the times. So as society changes, your morals changes. And that shouldn't be the case. Being gay is wrong. Being gay is not wrong. Being a slut is wrong. Now it's acceptable. Children can't change their gender. Now they can. So you can see without that anchor for your morality, society just creeps closer and closer to degeneracy. And I'm telling you, what's next is pedophilia and incest. That might sound crazy, but all those other things I talked about sounded crazy before, and now it's acceptable.
Sex isn't wrong.
That's
Sex is
exactly
not
right.
wrong.
So you guys have to convince us that
it's the most
It's beautiful.
powerful thing
It's
in the world. That's
amazing.
why you have to have standards because of the power. Like I would imagine you ladies don't like Donald Trump, so he was made by two people having sex. That's pretty powerful that one person
Sure, yeah,
is in the
sex
world
rocks.
because two people had sex, right?
Yeah, 100%.
This thing is like a nuclear reactor. Sex. It can create one person that can do things,
Yeah.
big things, and it has to be taken seriously on a
agree.
societal
I
level.
think-
Serious.
serious. Yeah.
There's an objective truth, and I think there's one objective truth, and whether you believe it or not, it's God's truth, and whether you're aligned with it or not, that's up to you.
But that's your subjective belief,
No,
that's all.
there's one objective truth, and from that truth, disorder comes. So we go off, we have sex with multiple people, disorder follows. When we are disobedient to God's design to the objective truth, disorder follows. We have people getting pregnant that they don't want to be. Now we have families breaking up. We have 52% of relationship divorces saying that porn was an issue. Sex creates all this disorder and dysfunction in our society, and the problem is that we look at it and we say, oh, it's fine. We should tolerate that. We should be okay with that. And that's not okay. We're going against the natural law, the natural order. There is peace when we have two people come together in marriage and are united together as one flesh. We have peace with that because it's with God's design. And
Obviously, I agree with the trad wives here, but they have to understand who they're debating here. If you come at them with nothing but religion, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. There's plenty of ways to combat promiscuity without having to bring up religion all the time. Number one, rising STD rates. Number two, the rise of births out of wedlock. And that can create more broken homes. And I can go all day about how single parent homes are bad for society. And number three, rise in divorce rates. I mentioned earlier about pair bonding and how the more partners you have, the more likely you are to get a divorce. So when you're debating people with this mindset, you have to point out how it negatively affects our entire society. And I think those are some good ones right there.
That is your subjective belief.
because I don't feel
But there
peace
is
with
this,
that.
there
are
is
people
disorder.
who will not agree
you
with
don't go
that.
and have
I
sex with a
will-
bunch of people and you feel shame. You feel bad. There's
I
a reason.
agree.
I don't feel any shame for doing OnlyFans. So what are you going to use? So
That's
convince
because
me.
your conscience is hardened, and that is the voice inside of us that when we go past it, we keep going past it. It's like taking a hot iron to the conscience, and you can no longer feel. This is why people who view porn, they seek out more intense types of porn, over the years, to where the basic vanilla stuff isn't doing it anymore. They have to seek out violent porn. You can go look it up. I mean, there are statistics.
Well,
So I think that
women seek out violent porn more than men.
right. I would say it's affecting women too.
No. I think that there are women who are just into different things, BDSM, etc.
But
Do you
why?
think something
It's
happens?
because-
Do you think
no,
something's
it's
wrong
because
with
the very
that?
nature
I
of
do.
pornography
Yes,
itself,
something happened to them.
The very nature of pornography itself is built and rooted within the patriarchy, which is a violent system. So the reason for that is that pornography itself, the reason why it's so uncomfortable, the reason why it disrupts marriages, is because pornography as we consume it and create it within a society, it is the result, like it was born of violence.
So we should ban it, right?
But no, we should create empowerment and safety within it so that women can.
There is no safety. There's sex trafficking. There's
Yeah,
exploitation
there
of
is.
women and
There
children.
is, and again,
we can't
those-
allow that. That's
But
not okay.
consensual sex work is very different from trafficking.
You don't
and
think that
child
those people are
exploitation.
being trafficked?
No, I think
there
like
are
for
a lot of
OnlyFans, for instance, I have to put in my government ID, I have to pay taxes.
Right, and so
There's
what
no
we want you to
children
do is we want you to take this off of Main Street and into the back alley where it
Bruh, the logic here is outstanding. Porn was a bad thing when men were in charge of the industry. But now that women have OnlyFans and they're the ones in control, now it's a positive thing?
should be so that our children and our spouses
Don't
and the
see
general
it.
public doesn't have to see it because
But
it's
guess what?
shameful.
They're
But you have to
going
you have to
to
get behind a paywall.
Growing up in a Christian household, I still think that sex is very intimate, and I think that I feel shame thinking about it, and I know a lot of my friends feel shame, and so I know that I think it's just disingenuous to think that like there's no negative effects when there comes with a lot of like sex.
Yeah, that's why I said it may not be healthy.
Yeah.
But with their world, they're saying you should feel shame, and I go, okay, why? Because I don't, and they go, oh, it's because your heart is hardened, or because you're
No,
not
I think
following
that's
the
a crazy thing to
Christianity.
say. That's a crazy
because
thing.
you're not believing. I just don't. I don't find Christianity convincing. So is there any
You
other?
don't have to be a
reason?
Christian. You can be, a virtuous person of any conviction to believe in these things because they're revealed by nature.
Have you ever felt any shame doing
For
what you
doing
did?
OnlyFans? No.
Or
Why should she?
before OnlyFans?
Yeah.
I mean, any shame? Yeah, I feel shame when I mistreat somebody. I feel shame if I'm dishonest in a situation. I feel shame if I'm being a bad friend.
And what does that
I don't
shame
feel
move you to do?
Be a better friend. But
Okay.
I don't feel shame by taking my body and doing something with my body that I want, that I feel great and
That's
empowered
because
doing.
you value money more than your morals.
No, it's just that my morals are not the same as your morals, right? I would never ever violate my morals to do anything. I just don't share your morals.
Right.
That's the
And
difference.
that's fine.
This is what your body was. You're not honoring what your body was made for. I came to these conclusions before I was a Christian, just because I studied, mother baby health and everything, like what the body's made for. Your body, God gave women a beautiful body, like we have beautiful bodies, to generate life, to do something men could never ever do, and that is why we're called to veil our bodies with a dignity that is higher than men, because we have life-bearing
So
vessels
you
that men
think
don't
my
have.
body is just to produce children? That's what it's
Not only, but that's the primary.
Listen, even evolutionary speaking, evolution doesn't care if you're happy
What
or
about women who
fulfilled or
biologically
empowered.
can't
It's
produce children? What about them?
Yeah, what about women who can't
Well, that's not their fault.
No, you're still built with maternal instincts and maternal. This is why women
that's true.
seek
I don't think
caring
that's right,
professions.
So are you saying it's shameful to not dress modestly?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's interesting, and that's your belief. That's totally
Right.
fine. But I think that shame again comes from your personal beliefs, but that it should not be baked into society, and that for the woman who is, because also too, modesty doesn't equal safety for women.
Not at all.
So if you dress modestly or if you dress more revealing, you still are at risk because of the merits of society and the structure of the patriarchy that does not respect your body or your autonomy. So if a woman biologically can't produce children, then based on what you've said so far, then she inherently does not have the same amount of value or equal. What about trans women who biologically
Well, they're
can't?
not women, they're men.
Oh.
And to go back to the previous point,
I was so scared to ask. I knew it.
to go back to the previous point you made, you said that our beliefs shouldn't be baked into society, but you're essentially saying your beliefs should then be baked into society.
No, we're living in a theological society.
We should.
We are not.
The thing that gets me with feminists is that they'll talk down on men objectifying women. But when women objectify themselves, now it's great and empowering. And somehow they can't see how they're only encouraging the idea that women are only sex objects. I think the trad wives could have done much better in this debate, but that's probably because they're too busy being good wives and raising the next generation. I think someone like Andrew Wilson probably would have bodied this debate, but it's still a good debate. But before I wrap this up, I do want my listeners to think long and hard about where you get your morality from. Because especially with these liberals, they operate on the harm principle. So basically, if it's not harming anyone, then it's okay. Well, if you're operating on the harm principle, then what's the problem with incest, right? So you see how there's that slippery slope there where if we don't draw lines and boundaries for what's morally right and what's morally wrong, then there's that slippery slope. And the harm principle doesn't really cover all aspects of, what's right and what's wrong. But honestly, when I think about it, even if we're operating on a harm principle, I've already mentioned all the ways promiscuity is harmful to our society. So when they ask the question, does body count matter? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it does. But that's all I got for this video. You guys let me know what points you agree with, what points did you disagree with. Please leave your comments below and let me know what you thought. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And if you got anything out of this video, hit that like button. Disagree to disagree. I'm out.